Hello, hello, hello. It's Randy Byrd, and this is Tuesday Titans Live. And I've got a beautiful soul in the house today. Matter of fact, she was on the show a couple years ago. Alexis Asbe, welcome.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, except I just called you Alexa twice, and my little thing out in the kitchen was yelling at me like, "What do you want, Randy? What do you want? You want the temperature down?" And I want lunch is what I want, but it's not quite that smart. But listen, I'd love to reintroduce you to some of our followers. Alexis Asbe, Northern California. Like I said, she was on the show a couple of years ago. Really, really well received with both men and women alike. But she has a program called The Aligned Feminine. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. We're going to really bring some female energy into this call. I love that personally. I believe that I like to be in touch with that vulnerable side, and especially when it comes to women. I don't know where it comes from, but Alexis and I have really spent a lot of time together talking about this, and really have come to adore each other. Even though she's married to a good friend of mine, Kelly, and I love him more than you. I'm sorry, I apologize. I love Kelly for a lot of reasons. Got a man crush on Kelly, but you're Aquaman. But welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And why don't we just jump right in? So tell us what's going on for you right now? What's going on in your world? And what are you seeing? Maybe with 2020, everything happening in the world, it's been an awkward year for a lot of people. What's happening in your powerful female inspired movement, if you will?
Well, intuitively, Randy, like 2020 really felt like a year of incubation for me. And I think that when we talked the last time, it was a couple of years ago, you're like, hey, what's next? What's next? And I'm like, not exactly sure yet.
I
I'm going to
remember that.
sort of slip into this a bit. And, I thought that maybe within 6 months from there, I'd be like rocking and rolling. But my body was actually just saying, hey, this is a time for you to rest and heal. You just sold a major company, and I took on a few private clients during the time. I did some travel. I launched 2 kids into college. Kids are doing great. They're
Oh,
in
that's
college
awesome.
now.
Good job.
And the most exciting thing for me is watching them, of course, thrive as a mother. And the second most exciting thing for me is watching my husband really thrive.
Hmm.
And those are of course, my core values.
Yeah.
And Kelly has always been, my husband has always been, and I'm going to speak to you from the perspective of like what it's like to live with someone like me who's all about feminine leadership and empowering women. And
Takes a strong man.
mhm,
Strong man.
and he's strong. I often say I live with savages. They're like warriors. They're wild animals, and they're far stronger than I am. But
Right.
for for me to be a woman that really, really values my husband, my partner, my lovers, you know, absolute total freedom is very, very important.
Mm.
And to watch him grow and actually be stepping into a different phase in his life is actually probably the most exciting thing for me because, of course, for a woman, you've been told and I've been told that 90% of our happiness actually depends on the choice of our partners or our mates, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And while we don't like to admit that at this stage in the game, because we can bring home the bacon fried up in a pan and never
Yeah.
let you forget you're a man, the truth is that the choices that we make, who we choose to partner with really does have a vast impact.
So true.
Mhm.
So, how long have you been married?
25 years.
Wow, congrats. And
Thank
that
you.
was a test. If you didn't know the date, I was going to hammer you for Kelly's sake. But you know, and here's the thing: we're friends, so it's easy for me to tease you probably a little more than a typical guest that we're getting to know. I deeply love you and Kelly and your relationship, not only with yourselves as a couple, but with your children. I've been able to live vicariously through social media and our relationship to watch those relationships. I remember when daughter was fixing the Jeep with Kelly, and I was almost weeping. It was so amazing to watch that relationship and the fun and the jabbing that goes back and forth in your household. It's a fun thing. You've always been a leader. When you guys can you talk about the business you guys had and sold?
Yeah, we actually started a disaster and restoration company here in Northern California, grew it to probably the leading one, and then ended up selling it. It was always our goal to start something that we would then sell as an asset. And we also do that very often. Like we always go into something with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Um, and I encourage people to do that. Is like, how do you want this to end is always something that you should be thinking about. And they're doing really well. For us, after the car fire, scaling that company to the level that it needed to go was really not in our passion.
Right.
And that was a tough one because we could, but
Could have
didn't,
doubled or whatever you wanted to do. I mean,
could have.
but it comes
However,
with a cost, right?
yeah, it comes with a cost. Not, just because we can doesn't necessarily always mean that we should. And it was pretty stressful. And we just started to realize that it was time to let it go. And so we had a super spiritual, powerful experience on the beach of Hawaii. We were kind of at odds in our relationship at that time. I was like done a couple of years ago. He was still holding on. What is he going to do? That kind of thing. And we had this really magical experience. And I was basically like, hey, dude, I really love you, but I can't do this anymore. And he's like, well, I really love you and I'm not ready. So how do you
Right.
navigate that as a couple? The cool thing is that we came to this awareness on the beach in Kauai.
Wow.
And when we came home, we literally had 4 meetings in 4 days and we closed the deal within 90 days.
Wow. That's a big deal for that size of a business. And I remember working with Al Naccioni at Remax when you guys first moved into town. Charlie Cram, you guys connected with him very early. I don't know if you knew Charlie before he moved to town or if you met.
Yeah, Charlie was in our wedding.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that. So Charlie and I worked side by side and he introduced us together, matter of fact. And I remember that day in the Remax office upstairs that I met you guys for the first time. And you were kind of bigger than life then, I remember. And, our personalities just attracted very quickly. And I'm very proud of what you guys accomplished. And that was a very significant business. And, it had to be hard letting go. That it's like letting a kid go when you build a business like that. Did you guys stay involved in it or were you able to cut kind of clean on that?
No. We sold to our partner, which was perfect. It
Oh,
was a great fit
beautiful.
for him.
Beautiful.
And we made a clean break. I've sold a few companies now, started and sold, and have been involved in multiple transactions where people have sold things that feel like their baby. And it is difficult. And every time I think that it's not going to be difficult, there's something even deeper to get. So,
Totally.
yeah.
So you're a CEO of a significant business. I don't know what your role was specifically, but you and Kelly running it. I think you were running the front end and the administrative and leadership side. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely.
Beautiful facility, by the way. I've been there and it was, very classy, very well done. So what does that look like for you as a woman that's not only in that leadership role in a business world, but to also be really on the journey of this aligned feminine,
Oh,
movement, if you will, because you were going back and forth to New York for a while, right?
absolutely.
Tell us
You know,
about that.
I chose to do some work back in New York, one for my own development, because as a coach, as a consultant, as a mother, as a wife, like I want to constantly becoming period, and also evolving and learning and growing. As you know, you can't really be someone who's a teacher without being teachable. So that's huge for me. And during that time, it was difficult, really figuring out, and this kind of goes into what the work is that I'm doing right now, is that we as women have really learned on to take on what I call a masculine role.
Mm.
Okay. And I don't mean that gender specifically. We both have masculine and feminine in us. Kelly, my husband, has masculine and feminine energy. You have masculine and feminine. Your masculine is this strong, driven leadership, decisive, and your feminine is vulnerable and creative and problem solving and in flow. So those are aspects. However, for me, being in the construction world, and also in disaster, it was really difficult for me to excavate what my core feminine essence was.
Mm.
And what I decided to do was just bring it into every area of my life, including how I did my management meetings. And so we would do management meetings where I would encourage women to share something that they were proud of. and less about the work and more about what was going on with them internally. And what actually ended up happening was we had our best years ever
Wow.
when we were fully integrated.
Wow. That's amazing. So I want to talk about a subject that it's a little nervous for me to talk about because it's I think you know what I'm talking about. CR Gibbs, you had an event there. I don't know. I think I came in because you guys were having an event, or I don't remember what the event was, but there was quite a few people there. I saw you immediately. My eyes lit up. I love you. We embraced, we hugged, we caught up for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we connected. And you are a master connector. And I remember that like it was yesterday. And I don't know how long ago it was. 7 years, 10 years. It could have been. It's a long time ago, right? I don't know what it was, but I remember it like the impact on me was significant. I'm still talking about it and we still bring it up, but we sat down and we were deeply connected. You're a master connector. You were in my eyes. You're forcing me to connect back to a point where it was almost the power was there in your position, right? And I'm probably not going to get through this very well language wise, but I think the listeners are going to understand where I'm coming from. And I said, with nothing but love, I go, Alexis, I'm seeing your stuff. What's going on? I mean, I see your power and everything's about powerful women and stuff. And to me, from a man's perspective, I took it like, and I don't want to say man hater, that's totally inappropriate, but the energy from my perspective, my filter of looking through it was that you were thinking women didn't need men. Is that maybe a fair assumption of how I brought it out to you?
Yeah, I remember that conversation and I was so grateful. It was like, you know, you can feel something that's happening, but no one's really willing to talk about it
Right.
unless Randy Byrd is in the room, where I get super excited because I'm like, aha, okay.
Insert foot into mouth, but go
It's so
ahead.
good though. It's so good. And it's like so brave and courageous that you would have the the trust of me to just say, hey, I kind of am feeling like as a man, like, where do we fit into this equation? Like, you guys don't need us? Like, what the heck is that about?
Right.
Or gosh, does that mean that you don't really like men or support men? And I think the other piece to that conversation that was so telling to me was you said, why do I feel like I'm under attack
Mm,
when you are encouraging women?
yeah. And it makes me nervous now to talk about it. So that means there's something there. And I dig getting into my shit when I feel that way. We've talked about this, right? That is where my growth has been. And I think that, especially as women have excelled and moved up into the corporate world, and real estate now is dominated by women. It's like 66 or 68% of real estate agents, especially highly successful ones, are women. And I think from my perspective, and it might be a man statement that you could slap me for, and I totally understand. But I believe that they have multitasking ability, the motherly thing, the communication at maybe a third grade level to children, and raising kids and understanding that experience, where I don't think a man maybe has that same experience. My mom died when I was little. I was 7 and my brother was 4. And so I raised my brother. And I remember having one of my first coaches going, dude, you're fucked up. And I'm like, wait. He goes, you just had a childhood that forced you to grow up at 7 years old. And so he extracted what that looked like for me. It was the first time anybody's ever said that to me, that I was codependent and I had these tendencies because I was forced to grow up at a 7-year-old age. And that was true. My dad was a cop. He was working all the time. And I had to protect my little brother. I had to raise us and cook and clean and pick up. And eventually, as this progressed on, my dad married and remarried and a couple things back and forth, but I still remember being that a parent effectively in my, even preteens.
Mhm.
And I think that for me, my journey through that understanding in that coaching relationship to now going, aha, and now I'm just a connoisseur of that energy, that vulnerability or that transparency and intimacy. What into me you see,
Yeah.
and you met some of my past relationships, and you've been involved in several of them. You were at one of my weddings, and so we've been intimately involved in that friendship, and you've got to see in me, and I've got to see in you and Kelly equally. But for me, I think that's where there's a lot of value in this particular segment and call today for you is, and I didn't ask you to do this, so I'm going to kind of play with me a little bit, but I'd like to ask you some questions that I think would impact listeners of how you would handle situations if maybe if a female asked you a question of how to deal with something in a relationship. And to me, it seems like it's valuable because you're an incredible coach, you're an incredible leader and inspirer. And so a little off script, but are you cool with it?
Absolutely.
I love it. So I'm a female that comes to you that is coming from a, running a household, running a family, and now transitioning into the work environment, maybe as a real estate agent. I have a lot of female clients that I coach, and they are having similar situations with this. How do you navigate between them transitioning from being maybe the protector of the family and the provider while the husband was making the money and providing that husband type traditional trait, if you look at it as, to then becoming maybe even the breadwinner, the main, operator in the family in terms of both income and stability? How do you navigate that relationship with a woman to keep her in her feminine energy and, work in that relationship to see that at its highest level, operate at a 10?
Such a good question. And thank you so much for asking that, Randy. I think it's let me just repeat back what I hear you saying is that this woman is transitioning from maybe being a stay-at-home mom to actually going out and working. And there could be potentially some challenges at home about like where her responsibilities would lay at home. Yeah. How does she maintain this maybe passion or relationship and keep it hot, keep it juicy at home while at the same time going after her career goals?
Yes. And to expand on that, she's now wearing the pants in the family. Let me just be a guy for a minute. She's wearing the pants in the family. She's making the money now. Her schedule is the dominant schedule. And, a husband may have to take a position to the backseat of that, in my opinion. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how really both parties can navigate that as we're starting to see that much more, especially in the real estate space. It's very common.
Very common that perhaps a woman would be the primary breadwinner for the family. And when people ask me, like men that are actually staying home or that are retired and their wives or their partners are still working, yeah, they're like, I'm not exactly sure what my role is. And they don't really know what to call themselves. They don't want to be called like a stay-at-home husband. Right. And what I always tell them is that you're a partner. You guys are in partnership. In order for her to be able to do what she's doing, right, and vice versa, you're a partner first, right? And so I would definitely, if the woman was coming to me and asking me like how to navigate it, I would definitely say to her, first of all, the most important thing that you do is respect your partner, the utmost respect, and be very much in touch with what their desires are as well as your own desires, and lead from that place. I do not agree, support, promote ever the bashing of a man. In fact, it's the most important value for me to have the utmost respect for a man, my partner, or any man that was in the room. And that's because we're humans. Like I wouldn't want to be disrespectful to another woman, let alone another man. However, I think that there's been this rage that's come over women, for a lack of better terms, that feels like they need to like really aggressively defend their position. And that's not true. If you want something from a man, if a woman wants something in her career, her coming with her anger, righteous or not, is never going to be heard well. And I was actually coaching a politician, and she was righteously angry, and I can understand her frustration, and she's definitely trying to get a message across. And I said, sweetheart, you have so much to deliver. However, your rage is preventing you from being heard.
Ooh, gave me goosebumps.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
it's true. And where do you think that comes from? Is it the need to stand up to be heard, or is it just a primal instinct to elevate to be heard? Boy, we seldom have challenges in my relationship when we talk, and different things, and the elections and the world bullshit and chaos and stuff has really created a fractional conversation many times.
Right.
And I personally, listening to your advice, I really try to listen, right? We have two ears and one mouth for a reason, and this one usually does all the walking. Um, but I find when I really listen to what's going on, and be exploring in the whole story and stay curious, that as a man, all of a sudden the female partner is heard, and then also I'm informed, and
Mhm.
then we can navigate those waters. But I'm guilty of that knee-jerk reaction, because I think I know what I'm talking about, or I think I heard enough. I just often will react too fast and not let my partner and or somebody significant that I really do care about what they're saying and what they're thinking. My ADHD and my fast-paced personality gets in the way of that sometimes, and I really wish that, and I'm working on it. I really embrace the idea that I'm spending more time really being curious in conversations now, as than I ever was, really. And I think that's just part of the growth piece of it.
I'm so glad you said that. One of my missions this year is to become more childlike, to become more curious, to
Um,
become more
Playful.
playful.
I like
Yeah.
it. I like it.
Yeah, and I think curiosity is really going to be probably one of the is a power tool, in my opinion, into
Mm,
innovation and creation,
wow.
in organizations, in our lives in general. Otherwise, that contraction is where you live, right? People are scared and they're fearful and they don't become curious, and there's really no opportunity for growth if we're in this contracted state.
That's so true. So
Mhm.
true. So I love this. And I could spend all day with you. Let's shift gears a little bit. What are you reading right now? What are you attracted to in terms of feeding yourself, your brain, your motivation? What's going on for you right now, either listening to or reading?
Oh my goodness. Well, I used to be a big Anthony Robbins fan, and I still am. And I did a lot of that work back in my 20s when I was really operating out of what I call my hyper masculine. And I was trained by Michael Gerber, who's the have you read his books, The E Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth? So literally worked with Michael for like 11 years, and um, again, super masculine. Right now, what I'm reading is I'm rereading Pussy, a reclamation story, which is about women's bodies and sexuality and eroticism, and where the power is in that. I'm also listening to and reading things like Green Lights with Matthew McConaughey. I love that.
I
I'm
love
really into
him.
that book. Favorite book of the year, 2020, Untamed, Glennon Doyle Melton, um, and Inside Out by Demi Moore.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that one.
Oh gosh, it's so good. So we grew up with Demi Moore, right?
She's had
So
quite a journey too.
quite a journey, and I had no idea, but she pairs the seasons of her life with the movies that we were all watching, and you're like, holy crap.
No way.
Like that was going on behind the scenes while she was filming St. Elmo's Fire.
Wow.
Or, what was the one she did with the military? A Few Good Men.
Oh yeah, she's so hot. Oh my God.
She is so
She's
amazing.
like the top three probably.
Yeah, and she was contending with what so many of us women secretly contend with, right? Is low self-esteem, massive amounts of body issues,
Mm.
raising children, how to be like integrated in her marriage and not and it wasn't happening at that time. And then this radical amount of awareness that she didn't know how to be happy.
Mm. So crazy. So I told you I'm gonna ping pong a little bit. Body issues, you mentioned that, and that was on my list. How do women in this judgmental social media world feel good about themselves? I mean, on an internal level, not just make believe that I feel good, but how could a woman that's watching this segment give her some nuggets to take away, because you're master at this, you really are, and you find a way to be in, I think, what you can say to be your worst, like beach hair all screwed up, but that's like your sexiest, when your behavior is matching, you're just dressed for the Emmys, but you look like a hot mess. And that's my experience, and I've seen you do it. How can you impact women that watch this that really maybe struggle with some body issues, and what's that look like?
Well, first of all, Kelly and I have this conversation often. He's like, every woman struggles with body issues. I'm like, every single woman on the planet at some point during their day questions their image. And the way that I deal with that personally, especially as we're getting older, right? Because we're grieving.
Right.
I'm watching my daughter walk around and I'm like,
I know.
oh, that's what I look like. Wow, I should have really like taken
Right.
advantage of that.
I wish I knew that back then.
Right. And for me, where the real attraction is, and this kind of goes back to that initial conversation. You said, I caught your eye from across the room and you could feel me.
Yeah.
Like you could feel the stare, you could feel the glance, you could feel me pulling you towards me.
Energy.
And this is true in negotiations or in just walking around in daily life. Is that how do I cultivate as much of my own inner turn on, my inner pleasure as possible?
Mm.
So I don't wear clothes anymore that aren't comfortable.
So it's not about the outside, it's about the inside. Is that what I'm hearing?
Wear things that make me feel really beautiful or feel good on my
mean
skin.
in an appearance way or a physical touch way or both? Or
Both.
explain that to me, because
Absolutely both. Yeah.
okay.
So for example, is if I have to do something that I don't necessarily want to do or is maybe not in my pleasure, right? I'm going to figure out a way to bring as much joy and turn on to it as possible. And how that actually comes through me is if a woman is struggling with a body issue, I would ask her to feel into herself and cultivate that internal radiance, that internal light inside, because that is what is the magnetic pull of actually being able to receive.
Mm. I don't know how to put words on this correctly, but I know the feeling when there's a woman in the room, and it's not just sexual energy. There's energy that I think can be misconstrued as sexual, but it's attractive energy. And it doesn't, I mean, in relationship to supermodel, they could be the opposite of that.
Right.
But they are so sure of themselves. I think it really comes down to that appreciation for themselves and or acceptance or whatever it may be. Because even myself, I could find myself prejudging just based on the look. And then all of a sudden I meet them and I'm like, wow, they went from this to this in almost just a look or an attitude or a belief, or because confidence is a very sexy thing. Confidence is an extremely sexy, attractive thing for me and maybe others. How do you move from that insecurity of a body part, something, right? It so blows me away, Alexis, when I talk to people and they're like females, and I get to know them through coaching relationships or something. And they're like, I can't do that. I'm like, why? Because there's going to be people at the pool. And I'm like, yes. And I'm not putting a bathing suit on. I'm like, you're hot. Not only you're like, people are mad at you. You're so hot. What's going on for you? Everybody's different, but I think you're right. Every female, male or men are the same, but I think female really super analyze and be critical to themselves in this nature. What's a tool? What's a strategy that they could do to move through that, to get to a point of self-love and self-appreciation, and without changing a look or going to the gym, they can move from a 6 to a 9 in outside appearance, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I have something that's probably not appropriate for this particular meeting. However, it is something that I teach, and it will immediately change a woman's constitution in the way that she walks, in the way that she can actually magnetize in. However, when we're talking about like maybe body issues or
Yeah.
something, is I would dive deep into where that shame is
Mm.
and what where the messaging has been that they are not beautiful the way they are. And so much of what has been out there, like you had mentioned earlier in social media, is, there's Facetune and there's all these, Photoshop apps, and you can lighten this and you can trim this and you can lengthen that. And the truth is that um, none of that really matters, right? And
I know what you're
um,
talking about.
I would say a tool would be to really cultivate and develop a deep relationship about where your shame is and uncover what that is. And a lot of it comes from what I call the mother wound and the over sexualization and shame around sexuality in our culture and what we've been trained to believe. Randy, babies flirt, animals flirt. People are designed to flirt. Like
Mm.
we are designed to have this tango, this give and take nature. And the problem is that we have been sequestered and squelched so much on what sexuality is that there's some sort of shame in it. And so immediately, if a unconscious man feels like a woman is maybe addressing him, he's thinking she's coming on to him. She's just being friendly. She's just being a delightful light, or
Right.
vice versa. And I will often remind women, I'm like, he's just being pleasant. Just because he's being delightful with you does not mean he wants to jump in the sack with you. He's flirting with you. Dance with him a little bit, interact, give and take, be authentic.
It is. It's so interesting. And then there's that protection that comes with, I don't want to send mixed signals. I don't want to do this. And you have mastered a way to do the tango without that feeling that comes with an unknown area or a gray area, as if there's any chance for the next level. I don't know how you do it. You're a master at it. And I think it really gets back to the connecting piece of it. But wow, Alexis, I could do this all day. I love having you on the segment. I know there's going to be a lot of people that get impact out of this. Before we wrap up, where can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want coaching? You're an amazing coach. I know I personally sent people your way because I knew that they would have impact with you, and I know that to be true. But where can people get a hold of you?
Thank you so much for doing that too, Randy. I really appreciate that.
Pleasure.
LexisAsbe.com, so first and last name.com. And I do take a select group of private clients, but I do have a group coaching program. So if they're interested in that, they just have to go to the work with me button and shoot me an email.
Awesome. So AlexisAsbe.com,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Mhm.
Awesome. And last question. What impact do you want to have on the world?
Oh, I think for me, it's small right now. For me, I really believe in the way the feminine works is that when you drop a pebble into the water, that the ripple effect goes out, and it's not necessarily from me. And so my deepest desire and the impact I'd like to have is to impact a few people that actually go out and ripple out into the rest of the world with their gifts, and that my reach far exceeds what I thought might be possible.
What you could actually touch. That's beautiful. Well, again, I deeply appreciate you being here. It was everything I thought it would be and more. And you still make me nervous, but I like it.
I do?
Yes, you do. I
Really?
love it though, because it reminds me of what it is that makes me nervous. It's like that connection, right? And I really love this about you. We could not see each other for a year or 2 years, and we connect physically in eye contact, and I could just feel you reaching into my soul and caring. And that is an art. That is
Oh,
something that I strive to be in my coaching practice, as well as a leader in my organization, is I want to touch those souls and have them know that it's a true touch and not just a motivating, inspirational, moment in time, that I'm really impacting them through that. And I will say, I believe I have learned some of it from you, and I really admire you and Kelly. Thank you for being here today. I really, really appreciate you. And I know people are going to get a lot out of this as well.
Thank you. May I just frame, I absolutely adore you and the man that you are, and the masculine, beautiful space that I feel so safe with you. I feel so comfortable, and I feel so held. And I love that you still get nervous. And I love the message that you are bringing and how you are inspiring people to do their very best work. And I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Well, that's a perfect end to Tuesday Titans. This show is brought to you to bring the Titans in the industry and have you really challenge what you're capable of. So with that, thank you for being here. Till next
Love
time,
you.
Randy Byrd and Alexis saying peace out. Bye for now.